Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Be Good Leadership. I am Ronnie Caldwell, and we are talking about the silver rule for leadership. Don't do anything that you would hate if it was done to you. First, I'm going to start with a story about a study that talks to us a lot about the realities of empathy. So, in this study, what they would do is have two separate groups of people watch a video of a person who is just stuffing their face with hamburgers. They're just eating away hamburger after hamburger. The first group, the people are fed a meal. They're fed a meal, they eat it, they finish their meal, and then they watch this person just scarf down burger after burger. In the other group, watching the same video, these people are made to do some kind of cognitive games and stuff like that. But for quite a few hours, something like 5 to 6 hours, they're not fed anything. So these people have not eaten anything. They're kind of hungry. They've been using their brain power. And then they watch the video of this person just stuffing their face with burgers. Then afterwards, they ask and see what the perception of the person in the video was to the people in these particular groups. And what's interesting is that the people who had eaten, the people who were full, they weren't hungry, their estimation of the person who was stuffing their face was much lower. They thought they were kind of disgusting, gross, inappropriate, this, that, and the other. Their character was lower whenever they asked questions about to evaluate this person and who they were. But in the group of people who were hungry, many of them thought, man, I do that too. How hungry I am. I'd love to have one of those burgers. They didn't have as much of a problem. They didn't actually see the person as very disgusting or anything else. Why? Because they were feeling what maybe they thought that person was feeling. Whereas in this group, they were full. They weren't hungry. So their judgment of this person was much less empathetic. And over again, we have these types of studies which show us that we have a true and real difficulty feeling empathy for people when we are not in their position, when we are no longer in their situation. Even if we have been before, it's very easy for us to forget it. We are much more empathetic when we've felt it. In fact, the Stoic philosopher Seneca used to recommend that for at least a period of time, maybe a week or a few days or what have you, someone should practice poverty. Someone should practice, and what he would do is eat the simplest, cheapest food, and he would sleep on the floor with not very much cover and everything else, because what he was trying to do is to keep his empathy available and to harden himself, to strengthen himself, to also know and feel what it was to feel real poverty, because, well, he was a rich man by that time. But we lose this. And I say this because it plays so much into leadership, especially in schools, because the jobs of a leader, of a school leader and a teacher are so different. It's one of the biggest struggles that I think we have when it comes to people moving from teaching or counseling into being an administrator, because they're completely different skill sets, completely different jobs in many ways. And many of the skill sets that make you good in one don't necessarily translate over into the leadership position. But one thing that I think plays a huge role in almost any environment is the ability to feel into and to understand what someone else might feel. To be able to, if we don't want to say empathize, at least to take their perspective and understand it and not forget it. And that's so important. And that's why I believe the silver rule, when I talk to my clients, when I just remind myself in my practice, whether it's as a parent, whether it's in school, leader, any kind of job, the silver rule is so important for leadership. And I call it the silver rule because I first heard it referenced as that by the author Nassim Taleb in a book called Skin in the Game. And in that book, he mentions this, he calls it the silver rule because it's the opposite end of the golden rule. The golden rule, he says, is, hey, that's treat others as you would like to be treated. But he argues that the silver rule, don't treat others in any way that you would hate if it was done to you, is actually more robust, because we know a lot more about what we don't like. We know a lot more about what can be harmful than we know about what can actually be helpful. And you can apply this to a lot of different aspects of your life. And I think it's one of the easiest mind frames to keep when you're trying to lead or trying to be responsible for a group. It's the idea of, let me not do something to these teachers to make decisions in a way that I would have hated when I was a teacher, that would have been difficult for me to deal with or understand as a teacher. And if I wouldn't have understood it, don't, I mean, there are so many different ways that this can be applied. So I think the idea of, as a teacher, when I was a teacher, I did not like it when decisions were made and I didn't understand why. So as an administrator, I tried to make sure as much as possible before decisions were made, I was letting people know this is what we've been thinking about, making a decision about. And then once a decision was made, to explain, this is why we're going about this. I also hated, I was like, if something as obviously seems like it's not going well, why do we keep going in that direction if all the information is telling us that we need a course correction? So as a leader, I wanted to make sure that I stayed abreast of those, took in data, and was open to changing course if we needed to. As a teacher, maybe nobody who is a teacher would have liked it. I wouldn't have liked it if an administrator came into my room, had an issue with something that was going on, and didn't let me know. Didn't ask questions, wasn't curious about, hey, well, maybe this is not the whole story. So therefore, as a leader, I know I wouldn't have done that. So I need to remind myself and not do that to anybody else. These are all ways that can be applied. They can be applied also to how you deal with kids. I did not like to be yelled at as a kid. I didn't want to be yelled at and people raising their voice and talking to my face. I was the kind of kid that if someone yelled at me, I just kind of shut down and stopped listening to them. So as an administrator, I wasn't going to raise my voice. I'm not going to yell at a kid. I'm going to speak to a kid, give them some guidance, try to understand their perspective, and then as realistically as possible and as calm a tone as possible, let them know this is what needs to be done. This is how we're going to move forward. Always. I didn't want to be just a number in a school building. I didn't want to be just some kid, right? It was kind of cool. It was interesting to me when someone came and actually talked to me. Okay, so as an administrator, I'm going to say hello to people. I'm not going to ignore people. I'm going to try to the best of my ability to make people know that they are seen. To the best of my ability to make sure people don't feel unseen when I'm around. The silver rule can be applied, and it seems so basic. It's not something that you get taught in your leadership classes when you're trying to get your leadership degree. It's not something we talk about quite a lot in PDs when we go to different conferences internationally or anything of the sort. However, it's one of these ways that you can keep yourself safe almost even across cultures. Not, hey, this would be helpful. This is how I would like to be treated. But there's some definite consistencies around how people don't like to be treated. Don't be mean. Don't ignore people. Don't disrespect the social norms of the new place that you're in, right? Don't assume things without getting appropriate knowledge. Don't talk badly about someone and say things about them to others that you haven't actually expressed to them or given them a chance to give you some clear information on. This silver rule is definitely robust as a teacher and just as any person within a school. And it's an easy way even to speak to kids. One of the best ways and oftentimes easiest ways to talk to kids about ethical behavior, about how to treat people, is to bring it back to, honestly, if you're hitting someone, do you want to be hit? They might say, oh, I don't care, but they know they don't want to be hit. Right? Asking a kid to imagine themselves being a teacher, to imagine themselves teaching something and what would actually be tough for them. Would they hate it if no one was listening and everyone was talking while they were trying to do their job? Of course. Right? As a teacher, this is the thing, we slip up from this sometimes. Sometimes we actually end up treating people the way we were treated instead of, hey, you didn't like this as a kid. You didn't like this, it wasn't helpful. So why do it to a kid? Why not use the silver rule also in your classroom? First, do no harm is one of the safest and most robust ways that we can go about dealing with people, especially in a diverse environments, especially as international educators. And it's a great practice to sit down and write those things down for yourself. To say, what are the ways that I would hate to be treated? What are the things that I wouldn't want anyone to do to me? As a leader, remembering what it was like to be a teacher. As a teacher, remembering what it was like to be a student. As a parent, trying to remember what it was like when you were a kid. And trying not to just automatically acquiesce to, I'm going to treat you the way I was treated, the way I've seen people treated. Instead, doing a little bit more of the work, maybe the more robust work of building relationships by first making sure I'm going to do no harm first. Because we know more about what does harm than we actually have conclusive evidence about what is universally beneficial. Take the silver rule seriously, journal it, practice it, have a discussion about it with your leadership team, and be good.